Sometimes the worst hurts aren't the ones that mess up your body, but the ones that make your heart ache when people you thought were friends turn their backs. Sarah Brennan found that out the tough way when a wagon crash left her unable to walk, and her fiancé ditched her the very next day. The folks in Willowbrook turned away, too, leaving her all alone in a wooden chair at the edge of town. Then Jacob Cole, a quiet guy from the mountains, showed up with firewood. He saw her drop a book and couldn't reach it. Something clicked in him. He started coming by, fixing stuff, teaching her how to work with leather. People made fun of him. But when floodwaters hit the valley, her bravery and his loyalty saved half the town. What made this quiet guy see value where everyone else saw a problem? Before we dive back in, let us know where you're reading from. And if this story grabs you, make sure you're signed up for updates because tomorrow I've got something super cool saved for you. The sun was sinking low over Willowbrook in the fall of 1878, stretching long shadows across the dusty Main Street. Sarah Brennan sat on the porch of her little cabin, parked at the east end of town where the houses turned into wide-open prairie and far-off mountain. Her wooden wheelchair, carved by her dad years ago for her grandma, now had a job nobody could have guessed. She was 32, but the last 6 months made her face look older than her years. Her honey-colored hair, once done up fancy for church parties and town dances, now hung in a plain braid down her back. Her hands, which used to make the prettiest embroidery and clothes in 3 counties, mostly stayed still in her lap. The rough spots from sewing were fading, replaced by new ones from pushing her wheelchair's wooden wheels. The cabin was her dad's, Samuel Brennan, who ran the general store on Main Street for 23 years until his heart stopped 2 winters ago. He left Sarah the store, the cabin, and a bit of money that was running low. She'd run the store herself for a year and a half, proud and on her own, engaged to Thomas Garrett, the son of the town's richest shopkeeper. Life felt so sure back then. She knew her future. Marriage in spring, kids in a few years, a cozy life as a shopkeeper's wife. She'd even started sewing her wedding dress, cream silk shipped from San Francisco with tiny pearls from a catalog. That dress still hung in her closet, untouched, a reminder of a life she'd never get. The accident happened on a Tuesday in April. She was driving to Copper Falls, a town 15 miles north, to pick up fabric and drop off finished clothes. The road was bumpy from melted snow and her wagon wheel got stuck in a deep rut. The whole thing flipped. She remembered falling, the sky spinning above her. Then the wagon crashed down on her. They told her later a passing rancher found her 3 hours after. Doc Morrison said it was a miracle she was alive. The wagon crushed her lower spine. She'd never walk again. That's what he said, kind but clear. Never again. Thomas visited every day that first week. He held her hand, said it'd all be okay, that they'd work it out together. But as weeks passed and the truth sank in, his visits got shorter, more awkward. He stopped looking her in the eye. By the 2nd month, he came twice a week. By the 3rd, once. The last time she saw him was mid-June, 3 months ago. He stood in her cabin, hat in hand, not meeting her gaze. He said all the usual stuff, that he cared, that this wasn't what he wanted, that he hoped she got it. But his family had plans for him. His dad's business needed a proper wife, someone who could host parties, go to events, have kids. Sarah didn't say a word. She just nodded, watched him set her grandma's engagement ring on the table, and listened to his boots walk away. She didn't cry until his horse trotted off down the road. The town's reaction was slower but just as painful. At first, people were nice. They left food at her door. Church ladies brought flowers and kind words. But kindness runs out and pity gets old. By fall, the visits stopped. The food stopped coming. People nodded if they passed her cabin, but they didn't stop to chat. They didn't look at her. She kind of understood. She was a reminder that life could break you, that you could be fine one day and not the next. It scared them, and fear makes people avoid you. Her days became a quiet routine. She woke with the sun, got herself from bed to chair using a rope and pulley Doc Morrison set up. She handled her needs as best she could, though it still embarrassed her. She sold the store to Thomas's dad for way less than it was worth since she couldn't run it anymore. The money helped, but it wouldn't last forever. Most mornings, she sat on her porch with a blanket over her lap, watching the town start its day. She could see Main Street, people going about their lives moving forward while she stayed stuck. Her neighbor, Mrs. Henley, came by once a week with bread and nosy concern. The widow was nice enough, but her visits felt like a duty, not friendship. She asked the same things. "How you holding up, dear? Need anything? Eating enough?" While her eyes checked the cabin for mess or gossip. Sarah's only real friend was Copper, her dad's old hound dog. He was almost as old as her wheelchair, with gray fur and creaky joints. But he never left her side. He slept by her bed at night and napped by her chair on the porch during the day. Sometimes she talked to him just to hear a voice, even if it was hers. Right now, a worn-out book, Robinson Crusoe, sat on her lap. Her dad gave it to her when she was 12 after her mom died. He'd said, "We gotta learn to survive on our own island." She didn't get it then. She got it now. The book had been her friend through these long months. She'd read it so many times she knew parts by heart. The story of a guy stranded, building a life from nothing, hit her differently now. She was stuck, too, on an island of her own body's limits, watching the world pass by just out of reach. Evening was creeping over Willowbrook, painting the sky orange and pink. It was getting chilly. Soon it'd be too cold to sit outside. Winter was coming, and with it, new worries. Her firewood was low, and she couldn't chop or haul more. She tried hiring someone in town, but their prices were too high, and their pitying looks were worse than the cost. She pulled her shawl tighter and opened her book to a favorite page. Copper perked up his ears, then settled back with a soft huff, probably just a rabbit. But then she heard it too, wagon wheels creaking, hooves clopping slowly. Someone was coming. Sarah gripped her book tighter. Visitors were rare, and surprise ones even rarer. She watched a wagon roll up through the dusk, pulled by a strong gray horse. The driver was a big-shouldered man in a canvas coat and a wide hat. The wagon was piled high with neatly stacked firewood. As he got closer, Sarah recognized him, though they'd never talked. Jacob Cole, the mountain man who lived up in the high country and came to town maybe once a month for supplies. People said he'd been around for years but kept to himself. Some thought he was hiding from something. Others just called him weird, the way loners get when they're alone too long. He stopped the wagon in front of her cabin, set the brake, and climbed down easily, like he was comfortable in his own skin. He was maybe in his 40s, though it was hard to tell with guys who lived rough. His face was tanned and lined, his dark hair graying at the sides. He had a quiet vibe, not empty but deep, like still water. "Evening," he said, his voice low and a bit rusty, like he didn't use it much. "Evening," Sarah said back, unsure. He pointed to the wood in his wagon. "Heard you might need firewood." Sarah's pride kicked in. Another person feeling sorry for her, doing a good deed to feel better about themselves. "I didn't order any firewood," she said. "I know." He was already moving to unload. "But winter's coming, and you'll need it. I can't afford—" Didn't ask for money. He lifted a stack of logs like they were nothing. Just seems like something that needs doing. Sarah wanted to argue, but the truth hit hard. She did need the wood. She couldn't let pride freeze her. "Thank you," she said, the words sticking in her throat. He nodded once and got to work, carrying logs to her woodpile by the cabin. He was quiet, steady, efficient. Copper watched him but didn't bark. Her dad used to say animals could tell if someone was good. Sarah watched too, feeling useless and annoyed. This was her home, her job, and she couldn't even stack her own wood. Her book felt heavy, and in a distracted moment, it slipped from her hands and hit the porch floor. She leaned forward, reaching, but it was too far to the right. Her arms couldn't stretch that far from the chair. She tried anyway, fingers out, tears of frustration stinging her eyes. Then Jacob was there, climbing the porch steps. He picked up the book and stood slowly. He glanced at the cover, then at her, and something changed in his face. Not pity, she knew pity. This was different, like he got it. He handed her the book, and their eyes met for real. Good book, he said softly. You've read it? She couldn't hide her surprise. Couple times. Helps when you're learning to survive alone. He looked toward the darkening mountains. Feels right sometimes. Before she could reply, he went back to his wagon. He finished unloading, then studied her cabin, his eyes lingering on the wobbly porch ramp and her wheelchair's loose wheel. That ramp's not safe, he said. Wheel needs tightening too. I manage, Sarah said, lifting her chin. Didn't say you didn't. He adjusted his hat. But things work better when they're fixed, right? I'll come back tomorrow with tools. You don't have to. I know. But I will. He climbed onto his wagon and clicked to the horse. Sarah watched him go, confused but feeling something new stirring in her chest. Copper huffed beside her, and she scratched his ears. The evening felt weird now, and winter was coming, but her woodpile was full, neatly stacked. And for the first time in months, someone had looked at her like a person, not a problem. She opened her book again, but the words blurred. Instead, she watched the road where Jacob's wagon vanished, wondering about this quiet man who lived in the mountains, read about castaways, and learned to survive alone. Jacob came back the next morning just like he promised. Sarah heard his wagon before she saw it, the creak of wood and jingle of tools. She'd barely slept, her mind spinning from the strange visit. She was on the porch early, telling herself it was just for the morning air. But deep down, she knew she'd been waiting. He pulled up with the same calm focus, this time with a toolbox and some fresh lumber in the wagon. Copper's tail wagged, a welcome he'd never given Thomas. Morning, Jacob said, tipping his hat. Morning, Sarah replied. You really didn't have to come back. Told you I would. He started unloading lumber. A man should keep his word. There was no arguing with that, so Sarah didn't try. She watched him check the ramp, testing boards with his boot, feeling the beams. His moves were careful, like he didn't waste energy. Whole thing needs replacing, he said after a bit. Wood's rotted at the base. Surprised it hasn't fallen apart. I've been careful, Sarah said. Careful only works so long with bad wood. He pulled out a measuring tape. I'll have it done by afternoon. Mr. Cole? Jacob, she corrected, his name feeling odd. I really appreciate this, but I can't keep taking charity. I have some money. Let me pay for the materials at least. He stopped measuring and looked at her, his dark eyes steady. Didn't ask for payment yesterday, not asking today. Got plenty of lumber and the work needs doing. That's it. But why? The question came out sharper than she meant. You don't know me. Why spend your time and stuff on a stranger? He looked past her to the mountains for a long moment. Because I know what it's like when people stop seeing you like you're already gone. He met her eyes. And I know what it means when someone sees you again. His honesty hit her hard. She nodded, her throat tight, unable to speak. Jacob went back to work, and Sarah rolled inside to give him space. She kept busy with small chores, straightening shelves, folding linens, anything to keep her hands moving and her mind off the kindness of a stranger when her own fiancé had walked away. Through the window, she watched him work. He moved like someone who'd built things before, measuring twice, cutting once, every piece fitting perfectly. There was something calm, almost peaceful about how he worked. At noon, Sarah made a simple lunch, bread, cheese, dried apples, water, and brought it out on a tray balanced on her lap. She rolled onto the new part of the ramp he'd already finished. It was smooth and even, so different from the old wobbly boards. You should eat, she said. Jacob stood, wiping sawdust off his hands. That's kind of you. They ate quietly on the porch steps, him on the lower step, her in her chair beside him. Copper napped between them, soaking up the fall sun. It was the easiest silence Sarah had felt in months. No awkwardness, no weight. How long you lived in the mountains? She asked after a bit. 5 years, more or less. His jaw tightened slightly. Before that, different places. Different life. The door closed gently but firmly. Sarah knew that kind of wall. She had her own. She let it go. What about you? he asked, surprising her. You grow up here? Born in St. Louis. Dad brought us here when I was 8. Mom died when I was 12. After that, it was just me and Dad. She smiled a little. He taught me how to run the store, keep the books, handle tough customers. Said a woman needs to know how to stand on her own 2 feet. The irony hung there. Jacob's face didn't change, but his eyes flickered with something like respect. Sounds like a smart man. He was. Sarah looked at her hands. I wish he was here now. He'd know what to do. Maybe he taught you better than you think. Before she could answer, hoofbeats came from town. They turned to see a rider coming fast. Sarah's stomach sank. It was Thomas Garrett. He stopped his horse sharply at her yard, dust kicking up. His face was red, maybe from riding, maybe from anger. His eyes flicked from Sarah to Jacob and back, darkening. Sarah, he said, jumping off his horse clumsily. We need to talk. What brings you here, Thomas? She kept her voice steady, though her heart raced. I think you know. He glared at Jacob, who stood slowly. The whole town's talking. Mrs. Henderson saw him here yesterday and now today. People are worried. Worried about what? Sarah's hands gripped her chair. About your reputation. About what people will think. Thomas sounded like he thought he was being reasonable. This man, this stranger spending time alone with you, it's not right. Anger and shame burned Sarah's face. Right? You want to talk about what's right? He's fixing my ramp, Thomas. The one that's been falling apart for 3 months because I can't fix it myself. Her voice got louder, months of hurt spilling out. Where was your worry about right when you left me alone? Where was the town's worry when I needed help and everyone turned away? That's not fair. We all have our own lives' responsibilities, and I had no right to expect anything from my fiancé? From the man who promised to marry me? Her voice broke, but she kept going. You couldn't leave fast enough once you knew I'd never walk again. Don't you dare lecture me about what's right. Thomas's face went red. I made a tough choice. My family has expectations. Your family has a business, and I became a problem. Sarah's voice was icy now. Just say it, Thomas. You were ashamed of me. You didn't want a wife in a wheelchair. I never... Thomas stuttered, but his face showed the truth. He looked away. Jacob spoke, his voice low but sharp. I think the lady's made herself clear. You should go. Thomas turned on him. This is between me and Sarah. You don't belong here. I'm here because she says I can be, Jacob said calmly. I'm on her property doing work she asked for. You're the one who doesn't belong. For a second, Sarah thought Thomas might do something dumb. His fists clenched, his chest puffed up. But Jacob's steady stance, like he'd been in fights before and won, made Thomas back down. He looked at Sarah, his face a mix of anger and hurt pride. You're making a mistake. When this goes wrong, don't come looking for sympathy. I won't, Sarah said quietly. I already learned that lesson. Thomas got back on his horse, jerky and awkward, and rode off fast, leaving dust behind. Sarah's hands shook as the adrenaline faded. She'd never spoken like that before, never let her anger out so openly. Part of her was shocked at herself, but another part, one she thought was broken in the accident, felt alive, strong. Jacob sat back on the porch step, picking up his sandwich like nothing happened. But his hands weren't steady either. I'm sorry, Sarah said. You shouldn't have been dragged into that. Nothing to be sorry for. He had it coming, talking to you like that. He chewed thoughtfully. Bet the whole town will hear about this by tonight? Probably. Sarah almost smiled. Mrs. Henderson's gossip is faster than a train. Does that bother you? What they'll say? Sarah thought about it. A week ago, even yesterday, she'd have said yes. Gossip and judgment would have crushed her. But something shifted in that fight with Thomas. Something broke free. No, she said, surprised it was true. I don't think it does anymore. Let them talk. I'm done living my life for what others think. Jacob nodded, and if she wasn't mistaken, there was a hint of pride in his eyes. Good. Life's too short to shrink yourself to make others comfy. They finished lunch quietly, but it felt different now, deeper. They'd faced something together, stood up to judgment side by side. It made a bond, small but real. When Jacob went back to fixing the ramp, Sarah stayed on the porch with her book, not reading, but thinking about walls coming down, about standing strong even when you can't stand, about a quiet mountain man who saw her as someone worth defending. By late afternoon, the ramp was done, solid and smooth, built to last through Wyoming winters. Jacob also fixed her wheelchair wheel, oiled the axles, and strengthened 2 loose support bars. "Should hold you now," he said, packing his tools. "But if something breaks, let me know. I will." "Thank you, Jacob, for everything, not just the repairs." He got what she meant. He was wrong, you know what he said. "You're not a mistake or a burden." "How do you know?" Her voice was a whisper. "Because I spent the day working with you and I didn't feel weighed down. I felt useful. There's a difference." He climbed onto his wagon. "I'll be back in a few days. Got some leather scraps and tools. Thought you might like to try working with your hands. Keeps your mind busy." He left before she could ask more. Sarah sat on her new ramp, running her hand over the smooth wood. Copper climbed into her lap, a rare move, like he knew she needed comfort. She held the old dog close and let herself cry, not from sadness but from relief. Someone saw her. Someone stood up for her. For the first time since the accident, she thought maybe her life wasn't over. It was just different, and different didn't mean worse. The Robinson Crusoe book sat under Copper's warm weight, its cover soft from years of use. A man surviving alone. But maybe, Sarah thought, surviving didn't always mean being alone. Maybe if you were lucky, someone else showed up on your island too. 2 weeks later, Jacob came back, and Sarah learned silence could be louder than gossip. The town buzzed about Thomas's visit, just as she'd guessed. But instead of juicy scandal, there was mostly quiet. People still didn't visit or stop to talk. But now their avoidance felt different, like they were unsure or uncomfortable with their own judgments. Sarah didn't care much either way. Facing Thomas had burned away her need for their approval. She was alone, but now it felt like her choice, not something forced on her. When Jacob's wagon rolled up on a chilly October morning, Sarah's heart lifted more than she expected. She'd been watching the road, wondering if he'd really return, or if his kindness was just a one-time thing. But there he was, with a wooden crate and a canvas bag stuffed full. "Morning," he said, tipping his hat. "Morning," Sarah said, smiling. "Thought the mountain ate you up. Takes time to gather the right stuff." He carried the crate to the porch. "Wasn't sure what you'd want to work with, so I brought a bunch." Sarah wheeled closer as he opened the crate. Inside were leather pieces, some thick, some soft, in different shades of brown. There were tools, too, punches, stamps, needles, small hammers. The bag had thread, beeswax, and patterns. "Jacob, this is too much." "Just scraps from my workshop collecting dust." He picked up a piece of leather, running his thumb over it. "Thought you might use it." "I don't know anything about leather work." Neither did I at first. "It's just practice and patience." He sat on the porch step, setting tools between them. "Here, I'll show you the basics." What came next was a lesson like no other. Jacob taught by showing, not talking much. He'd demonstrate how to hold a punch, hit it clean, read the leather's grain. His words were short but clear, and he never got annoyed. Sarah's first tries were messy. Her hands, weak from not being used, couldn't grip the tools right. The punch slipped, making a wonky hole. The stamp went crooked, messing up the pattern. Frustration boiled up, familiar and heavy. "My hands won't do what I want," she said, dropping the hammer hard. "They're useless." Jacob looked at her work, then her hands. "They made that hole, didn't they? And that stamp mark. Badly. But they did it." He picked up the leather. "First time I tried, I punched my thumb. Bled all over good leather." He showed a scar on his thumb. "Hands learn. Takes time." "You're just being nice." "No, I'm being honest. There's a difference." He set a new piece of leather in front of her. "Try again. Don't aim for perfect. Just aim for doing it." Sarah took a breath and tried again, focusing on the motion, the angle, the hit. The hole wasn't perfect, but it was better, straighter. "There," Jacob said quietly. "See?" They worked all morning, Sarah practicing simple moves while Jacob made a belt beside her. His hands moved easily, and she watched his calm focus, almost like meditation. "Where'd you learn this?" she asked. "My dad was a saddle maker. Grew up in his shop." He paused. "Thought I'd follow him, but life had other plans." "What happened?" He was quiet, and Sarah thought he wouldn't answer. "Got restless. Wanted to see the world. Joined up, saw things, did things. When I came back, Dad was gone, shop sold. Felt right somehow. There was weight in his words, stories he didn't tell. Sarah knew grief even when it hid behind acceptance. "I'm sorry," she said. "Long time ago." He went back to work, closing the door softly. "What about your dad? Taught you the store business?" "Yeah, said a woman needs to stand on her own." She gave a bitter smile. "He died 2 winters ago." Heart stopped one night. "Found him in the morning, already cold?" "That's hard. Still is sometimes." Sarah's hand stopped on the leather. "He was all I had left of Mom, of family. After he died, I thought I had Thomas, the store, a future. Then the accident took it all." "The accident didn't take Thomas. He left on his own." Jacob's words hit her. He was right. Thomas chose to leave. They worked in silence after that, side by side. By noon, Sarah had punched a neat row of holes in a leather strip and stamped a simple border. It wasn't pretty, but it was hers, made by her hands, which didn't feel so useless anymore. "I did this," she said, amazed. "You did." Jacob checked her work with the same care he gave his own. Good rhythm. Pattern steady. "Really? Don't lie about craft. It's either right or it isn't. This is right." He stood, stretching. "Keep practicing. Next time, we'll try something harder, like a coin purse or bag. You're coming back? If that's okay with you." "It's very okay." Something passed between them, a quiet understanding beyond words. This was becoming something. Not quite friendship yet, but the start of it. Two people who knew loss and loneliness, finding company and working together. Jacob left the crate and bag with her. "Keep these. Practice when you want. No pressure, just something to do when it's too quiet." He knew about heavy silence, she realized, how it could weigh on you. "Thank you, Jacob, for all this." He nodded, climbed onto his wagon. "See you next week." Sarah watched him go, then looked at the leather. The holes she'd punched, the pattern she'd stamped. Proof she could still make things. Her hands had done something. After months of feeling broken, she'd created. She spent the afternoon practicing, working until her hands hurt. Copper napped beside her, checking on her now and then. Her pile of practice pieces grew, each one teaching her something new about pressure and angle. As evening came, Mrs. Henley showed up with her usual bread. She stopped at the new ramp, surprised by how solid it was. "Well," she said, climbing up, "this is much better." "Jacob Cole built it," Sarah said, not hiding it. Mrs. Henley's lips tightened. "Yes, I heard he's been around. People are talking?" "I bet they are." Sarah kept working her leather. Mrs. Henley watched for a moment, curious. "What are you making?" "Just practicing. Learning leather work." "Didn't know you could." "I didn't. Jacob's teaching me." Sarah met her eyes. "He's been kind when most people haven't." Mrs. Henley looked uneasy. "People don't always know what to say." My situation is I can't walk. The loneliness, the isolation, feeling invisible, that's not my situation. That's other people's choice." Sarah's voice was calm but strong. "Jacob sees me as a person, not a problem. That's why he's welcome here." "I see." Mrs. Henley was quiet, then said, "He lost his family, you know." "His wife and daughter. Fever took them both in days. That's why he went to the mountains. Couldn't handle the memories in town." Sarah's hands stopped. Jacob had hinted at loss, but not the full story. "How long ago?" 5 years or so. He was different before. Smiled more, talked more. After they died, it was like he died too. Just kept breathing. Mrs. Henley left, and her words stayed with Sarah. Two broken people. Maybe that was true. But sitting there with the leather in her hands, the solid ramp under her chair, Sarah thought broken wasn't right. Changed, yes. Hurt, sure. But not beyond fixing. She looked at her leather strip, the neat holes, the careful pattern. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. Sometimes that was enough. Over the next few days, Sarah found a new routine. Mornings were for chores and managing her home. Afternoons were for leather. She practiced what Jacob taught her, working until her hands ached, but never quitting. Her pile of finished pieces grew, and so did her confidence. She thought about Jacob more than she should. His hidden stories, the loss that sent him to the mountains, the quiet strength in his patient teaching. He was solid, trustworthy in a way that wasn't about words or promises. He just did what he said he'd do. When Jacob came back the next week, Sarah had a surprise. She'd taken her best practice pieces and made a simple belt, stitching carefully. It wasn't perfect, stitches uneven, leather marked, but it was done and usable. Jacob looked it over, running his fingers along the stitches, testing it. "You made this?" "I did." "It's rough, I know." "It's good work." He looked at her, maybe proud. "Real good for your first piece. Most people quit before finishing anything." The warmth in Sarah's chest surprised her. When was the last time someone was proud of her? Not pitying, but really happy with what she'd done. "Thank you," she said softly, "for teaching me, for seeing what I can do, not what I can't." Jacob nodded, understanding passing between them. He pulled a bigger piece of leather from his wagon, already cut for something new. They worked all afternoon, Sarah learning new stitches as they made a small drawstring pouch. Copper now wagged his tail for Jacob, even letting him scratch his ears. As the sun set, Jacob pulled a small carved wooden figure from his pocket. A dog, clearly copper, with amazing detail. "Made this last week," he said, handing it to her. "Thought you'd like it." Sarah held it gently, stunned by the skill. "Jacob, this is beautiful." "You made this?" "Whittling kills time in winter. Got a cabin full of animals, no one to give 'em to?" He shrugged, but his eyes lit up at her reaction. "Figured copper deserved it." "Thank you." Sarah ran her thumb over the smooth wood. "I'll treasure this." They sat quietly as evening fell, two people who didn't need to talk all the time. Sometimes just being there was enough. Early November brought real snow, not just a light dusting, but heavy flakes that stuck. Sarah woke to a white, quiet world, beautiful but scary. Winter meant being stuck with tough times ahead. But when Jacob came that afternoon, he brought more than his tools. He'd worked on her wheelchair, showing it off with quiet pride. "Did some upgrades," he said, pointing to it. "Wider wheels for better grip, leather supports for your back and arms, and this." He showed a brake to lock the wheels on ice. Sarah touched the changes, amazed at the care. The leather supports had a simple, pretty pattern. "Jacob, this must have taken days." "Took what it took. Needed doing." He helped her into the chair, adjusting it to fit perfectly. "Try it." Sarah rolled down the ramp, and it was so much better. Smoother, steadier, comfier. She spun circles in the snowy yard, laughing with pure joy. "It's amazing." "Thank you." Jacob nodded, pleased. "Now you can get around better, even in winter. Won't be stuck inside." The word stuck hit her. He knew what it felt like to be trapped, by sadness or judgment or limits. By fixing her chair, he was giving her freedom. Over the next few days, Sarah tested her new freedom. She went farther from her cabin than she had since the accident, rolling along flat paths, seeing the world from her chair. Lower, closer to the ground, but just as beautiful. She watched squirrels, studied bare branches, felt the cold air, and called it living. One day, she made it to her dad's old store, now called Garrett and Son Mercantile. Her chest tightened, but she rolled up the ramp and inside. The store was familiar but different, with new stuff replacing her dad's setup. Thomas's mom stood at the counter looking surprised and uneasy when she saw Sarah. "Sarah," she said carefully, "this is a surprise." "Mrs. Garrett," Sarah said, just as careful. "I need some supplies. Thread, needles, beeswax if you have it." "Of course." Mrs. Garrett gathered the items stiffly. "I hear your leatherwork's selling well." "It is." "Thank you. Mr. Patterson says it's good quality." Mrs. Garrett wrapped the items. "It's good you found something to do." The words sounded nice, but felt like a jab. That leather work was all someone like Sarah could do. Sarah held back a sharp reply and paid. As she turned to leave, Mrs. Garrett said, "Thomas is engaged to Catherine Morrison, the doctor's niece. They'll marry in spring." The news hit like a rock, but the pain was far off, dull. Thomas felt like someone from another life. "I wish them well," Sarah said, and she meant it. Thomas deserved happiness, and she didn't want to be part of his story anymore. She left the store, head high, rolling through the snowy street. Some townsfolk nodded, others looked away, but Sarah cared less than before. Their opinions didn't define her anymore. Halfway home, Jacob's wagon appeared. He looked worried. "You okay?" "That's far from the cabin." "Testing the chair," Sarah said, patting it. "And myself." He understood. "Want to ride back?" "I'd like to make it on my own, but walk with me." Jacob tied his horse to the wagon and walked beside her. They didn't talk much, but his presence was enough as she thought about the store visit. "Thomas is getting married," she said finally. "To the doctor's niece." Jacob glanced at her. "How you feel about that?" "I thought it'd hurt more, but I mostly feel relieved. Like the last tie to who I used to be broke." She looked at him. "Is that weird?" "No. Sometimes letting go is the only way to move on." They walked quietly, snow crunching under his boots and her wheels. At her cabin, Jacob helped her inside and started a fire to warm the place. "Stay for supper?" Sarah asked. "It's the least I can do after you walked with me." Jacob hesitated, like he was thinking hard. This felt different, more intentional. Finally, he nodded. "That'd be nice." Sarah made a simple meal. Venison stew from meat Jacob brought, bread she baked, coffee. They ate at her small table, Copper napping nearby, the fire crackling. "Tell me about your wife," Sarah said softly. "If you want." "Mrs. Henley mentioned her, but I'd rather hear from you." Jacob was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, his voice soft but steady. "Her name was Anna. Met her when I was at a fort before I left the army. She was the grocer's daughter, had a laugh that lit up everything." He smiled faintly. "We married fast, maybe too fast for some folks. But when you know, you know." "You were in the army?" "Corps of Engineers. Built bridges, roads, forts, anything needed in rough places." He stirred his stew. "Did it for years before Anna. She made me want to settle down, stop moving." "And your daughter?" "Emma, 3 when the fever came. Looked just like her mom, dark hair, same laugh." His voice got rough. "They got sick a day apart. Doc Morrison tried, but frontier doctors can only do so much. Anna died first. Emma held on 2 days, asking for a mama." Sarah's throat tightened. "I'm so sorry, Jacob." Worst part wasn't losing them, as awful as that was. It was after, when people kept saying it was God's plan. Like there was a reason for taking a woman and kid who never hurt anyone. His jaw tightened. Couldn't stand the pity, the cliches. So I went to the mountains. Only place where silence didn't feel wrong, where I could grieve without acting for others' comfort. Sarah got it. After her accident, everyone wanted her to be brave, positive, inspiring. Nobody wanted the anger, the sadness, the messy parts of surviving. "Is that why you came back to town?" "Silence got too heavy?" "Partly. Mostly realized Anna would have hated what I'd become. She said life was for living, even the hard bits." He looked at Sarah. "Meeting you reminded me of that. Watching you fight to rebuild, find purpose. It showed me surviving isn't giving up." The honesty felt scary but vital. They were stepping into something new, saying things they'd kept quiet. "I'm falling in love with you," Sarah blurted, her heart pounding. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that." "It's not fair." Jacob took her hand across the table. "You think I come here 3 times a week teaching you, fixing your cabin, just for charity?" "I hoped, but I wasn't sure." "Sarah, I'll never walk again. I'll always need help." "Why would you want—" "Because you make me feel alive," he said simply. "You're brave, stubborn, and you don't let the world tell you your worth. When I'm with you, I don't feel like a ghost anymore. I've been falling for you too for weeks, just too scared to say it." Tears ran down Sarah's face, not sad ones, but joyful, relieved. "I'm scared," she whispered. Me too. Terrified. Jacob knelt beside her chair, eye to eye. But maybe being scared together is better than being safe alone. He kissed her, soft and careful, like a question. Sarah kissed him back, her hands on his weathered face. It was her first kiss in over a year, like coming home and starting a new adventure all at once. When they pulled apart, they were both shaky. Jacob rested his forehead against hers, breathing together, adjusting to this new truth. What now? Sarah asked. Figure it out as we go, I guess. He pulled back to look at her. I'd like to keep coming around, not just to teach or fix things, but to be with you. I'd like that a lot. They talked late into the night, really talked, in ways they hadn't before. Jacob shared stories from his army days, places he'd been, things he'd built. Sarah told him about her mom, growing up in the store, dreams she had before the accident, and new ones forming now. When Jacob left after dark, something big had changed. They'd admitted feelings that couldn't be ignored. The future was unsure, maybe tough, but Sarah felt it was a future worth having. Late November brought weird rain, not the usual light fall drizzle, but heavy downpours that turned roads to mud and made the creek run high. Jacob got worried, checking water levels every time he came to town, eyeing the mountains. It's not right, he said one afternoon on Sarah's porch watching dark clouds. This much rain, this late, with snow piling up high. The ground's frozen, can't soak it up. It's all running downhill. Is it dangerous? Sarah asked. Could be. If it warms up and the mountain snow melts fast with this rain, the creek could flood. Bad. Should you tell the town council? Jacob's face soured. They wouldn't listen to me. Mountain hermit warning about floods? They'd laugh me out. But if people are in danger, I know. He rubbed his face. I'll think about it. Maybe Doc Morrison would listen. But before Jacob could do that, Sarah spoke up about something she'd been wanting to say. I want to see your cabin, she said. Your mountain home. I want to know that part of your life. Jacob looked unsure. It's rough up there, Sarah. The trail's tough, even with your chair's upgrades. I trust you to get me there safely. Please, Jacob. I need to see all of you, not just the parts that fit my world. He studied her, then nodded. All right. Tomorrow, if the weather's okay. We'll need to leave early, and I'll have to carry you some of the way. I can do that. The next morning was gray but dry. Jacob arrived with his wagon and an extra horse. He brought blankets and a tarp, ready for anything. The trip up the mountain took over 2 hours, winding through pine trees and rocky cliffs. When the trail got too rough for the wagon, Jacob carried Sarah to his horse, holding her close, while the other horse carried her chair and supplies. Sarah had never been so high in the mountains. The air was cold, thin, smelling of pine and snow. The world felt huge, wild, untouched. She got why Jacob chose this place to hide. It asked nothing of him but to exist. His cabin appeared around a trail bend, nestled in a clearing by a stream. It was bigger than she'd thought, well built from logs he'd cut himself. Smoke curled from the chimney. He'd come earlier to start a fire. He helped her into her chair and rolled her up a ramp he'd built, maybe hoping she'd visit one day. Inside, the cabin was simple but cozy. A big room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen corner, a workbench with tools and half-done carvings. Furs and quilts covered a wide bed. Books lined a shelf by the fire, more than she expected. But the carvings stood out most. Small animals everywhere, detailed scenes on beams, delicate figures on the mantel. Years of quiet work Beauty made just for him. Jacob, these are incredible, Sarah said, holding a carved owl with feathers so real she could count them. Why didn't you tell me you could do this? Just something to do. Pass his time. But he looked pleased. As Sarah looked around, Jacob made coffee and set out lunch. They ate by the fire, and the cabin's peace sank into her. No wonder he survived here. It felt almost sacred. I get it now, she said. Why you came here, why you stayed. Do you? It's not running away. It's finding a place where you can think, where grief doesn't have to act for anyone else. Jacob nodded, relieved. That's exactly it. After Anna and Emma died, everyone wanted me to grieve their way, strong but not too strong, sad but not too sad. Up here, I could feel what I felt without worrying about others. December 1st came with warm air, odd for Wyoming. Jacob showed up at Sarah's cabin before sunrise, looking serious. Temperatures spiking. Snow's melting fast up high. He carried a satchel stuffed with papers and charts. We need to move today. Show this to Doc Morrison, then the council. No waiting. Sarah was ready, having barely slept. They organized Jacob's engineering papers, creek-level measurements, flood risk calculations, and sketches of how water would flow through town. This is good work, Sarah said, looking at the diagrams. Anyone with sense will see you know your stuff. Sense and listening aren't always the same, Jacob said, but he squeezed her hand, grateful. They went to Doc Morrison's house, Jacob pushing Sarah's chair through quiet morning streets. The doctor answered in his robe, surprised. Jacob, Sarah, bit early for a visit. Not a visit, Jacob said. It's urgent. Morrison let them in, his face turning serious as Jacob explained. The engineering papers grabbed his attention. I didn't know you had this background, he said, looking at Jacob's credentials. Army Corps of Engineers, flood control expert. He looked up. This is real? 15 years in the Corps, Jacob said, spreading his charts. Based on these, Willowbrook's facing a big flood, maybe in 72 hours if the weather holds. Morrison studied the data, alarmed. You've been tracking creek levels for months? Since September. It's gotten worse fast with this warm rain. Jacob pointed to a map. The school, church, Main Street, all in the flood's path. Sarah watched Morrison's face as he realized the danger. He decided to believe them. The council needs to see this, he said. I'll call an emergency meeting today. Will they listen? Sarah asked. They'll listen to me. And with these credentials, this data, they'll have to take it seriously. But the council meeting that afternoon was tougher than Morrison thought. Held in the church, the 5 council members looked curious or annoyed at the interruption. Howard Garrett, Thomas's dad, led the council and scowled when he saw Jacob and Sarah. Doc Morrison, he said stiffly, I thought this was about public safety, not this. It is about safety, Morrison said firmly. Listen to Mr. Cole before you judge. Jacob stood tall, like a soldier, and passed out his papers. He explained his background, showed his credentials, and walked through the data calmly. Sarah watched the council. Morrison was convinced. Blacksmith Tom Henderson looked worried. Mill owner George Patterson studied the charts seriously. But Howard Garrett and banker Samuel Wright stayed skeptical. This is impressive, Mr. Cole, Garrett said when Jacob finished. But you're asking us to act on guesses. Not guesses. Analysis from measurable data. Jacob stayed calm, but Sarah saw tension in his shoulders. The creek's 15% higher than normal. Snow's melting fast. Frozen ground can't absorb water. That's a recipe for flash flooding. You can't prove a flood's coming, Wright said. You're guessing. Engineering is about predicting based on evidence, Jacob said. I'm predicting with 15 years of flood control experience. Experience you left behind 5 years ago, Garrett said coldly. Along with this town after your tragedy. The room went quiet. Sarah's anger flared at the cruelty, but Jacob stayed steady. My personal life doesn't change the facts. Creek levels, maps, weather, they're real. Question my reasons, but not the evidence. I question if this is about safety or a man trying to seem important, Garrett said. Sarah couldn't stay quiet. Mr. Garrett, Jacob has nothing to gain. His mountain home's safe. He's trying to help people who've only judged him. The least you can do is take his warning seriously. Miss Brennan, Garrett said, like she was a child, we decide based on logic, not personal ties. Then use logic, Sarah snapped. Look at his data, his credentials. What's the cost of preparing? A few days of hassle, moving stuff to high ground, planning to evacuate. Compare that to the cost if he's right and you do nothing. Tom Henderson spoke up. She's got a point, Howard. My shop's in low town. If there's a chance of flooding, I'd rather be ready. The council argued for an hour, tempers hot. Finally, they voted 3-2 to warn people to watch, but no mandatory evacuation or big actions. It was a weak compromise, but better than nothing. Jacob gathered his papers, frustration clear in his tight movements. "It's something," Sarah said softly. "Not enough. When the flood comes, and it will, watching won't save anyone." Morrison joined them. "You did what you could, Jacob. Some will listen. Some isn't everyone." "No, but it's better than none." Morrison patted his shoulder. "Talk to people directly, ones who trust you. Build a group ready to prepare, even if the council won't." For 2 days, that's what they did. Jacob and Sarah went door to door to families who might listen. Some slammed doors. Others were polite but doubtful. But 20 or 25 families believed them. They helped them plan escape routes, secure papers, move valuables. Sarah knew who lived where, who was old or sick, who had kids. Jacob knew which buildings were at risk, which paths would stay open longest. It was hard, and the rejection stung, but they built a small network of people ready to act. On the 3rd day, Thomas showed up at Sarah's cabin, looking awkward. "Sarah, I need to talk." She almost sent him away, but saw something in his face. "All right, my parents' house is in Lowtown. I know Dad ignored Jacob's warnings, but I saw the data, the credentials. I think he's right. I don't want my parents to die because Dad's too proud." Sarah's anger at Thomas eased a bit. He cared about his family. "Prepare them yourself. Move valuables upstairs. Plan an escape. Watch the creek. If it overflows, get them out, whether they want to or not. Can you show me Jacob's evacuation routes?" She spread the maps on her table. Thomas studied them, asking smart questions. When he left, he said quietly, "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For how I treated you after the accident. You deserved better?" "Yes, I did," Sarah said. "But thanks for saying it." On December 3rd, Sarah woke to loud, fast water. She rolled to her window and saw the creek swollen, nearly over its banks. Jacob arrived soon, face grim. "It's starting." Temperature spiked overnight, melting snow too fast. Creeks at critical levels. He checked his watch. "We've got 4 to 6 hours before it overflows. We need to warn people. Already sent word to Morrison and the families we prepped. They'll spread it." He knelt by her chair. "Sarah, I need to get you safe first. Your cabin's high enough, but if the flood's worse than we thought, I'm not leaving. People need warning, and I know this town better than anyone. Who lives where, who needs help." She grabbed his hands. "We do this together, remember?" Jacob looked like he wanted to argue, but nodded. "Together. But we stay safe. I can't lose you." "You won't. We'll save who we can and build a future together." She kissed him hard. "Now let's warn this stubborn town." They moved through Willowbrook like a storm, Jacob's wagon rolling as Sarah directed him to every house. Some saw the rising creek and believed right away. Others argued until they heard the waters roar. The flood was coming, no time for doubt. "He's breathing," Morrison said, checking an older man. "Just shocked and stubborn. He'll live." Thomas knelt by his dad, relief and anger on his face. But there was no time for family drama. More people were coming from Lowtown, and the flood wasn't slowing. Sarah's cabin, on higher ground, became a key spot. Safe, but close enough to help. "We need to move there," Sarah told Jacob. "We can watch evacuation routes and have supplies. My leather stuff can be used for repairs, bandages, ties." Jacob didn't argue. He pushed her chair to the cabin, Thomas and others following. Sarah kept directing people, her voice calm and clear. "Henderson family, take the path behind my cabin to the church. Mrs. Sullivan, is your mother-in-law with you? Good. Keep going. Mr. Patterson, check the mill. Make sure nobody's hiding there." Her cabin turned into a hub. People streamed through, some resting, others heading to the church or high ground. Kids lost their parents, old folks needed rest, injured people needed care. Morrison set up a medical station on Sarah's porch. She worked with him, using leather scraps as bandages, her thread to stitch cuts. Her hands as useful here as they'd been making pouches. The woman everyone pitied was now vital. Mrs. Henley arrived with her grandkids, wet and scared. When she saw Sarah calmly helping, her face changed. "Thank you," she said. No hint of looking down. My grandkids are safe because of you and Jacob. Sarah nodded, already helping the next person. There was no time for feeling proud. There was just the work. Jacob led rescue teams, sending men back into the flood zone with clear instructions based on his knowledge of water and buildings. Henderson, take 3 men, check eastern houses. Water's not as deep there. Get anyone left out. Patterson, western route, move fast. Those foundations won't hold. Thomas worked with the teams, following Jacob's orders without question. Sarah saw him help an old lady to safety, saw him trust Jacob's know-how, and realized a crisis showed who people really were. By evening, the water stopped rising. It wasn't going down yet, but it wasn't getting worse. Jacob came back from his last rescue, muddy and tired, a cut on his forehead. Sarah cleaned and bandaged it, her hands steady. Her cabin and porch were packed. 57 people, she counted, but it felt right. Everyone's accounted for, Jacob said quietly. Few injuries, mostly small. Some damage, but everyone's alive. Because you knew it was coming and gave us time, Sarah said. Because we both did. He took her hand. I had the know-how, you had the connections. You knew who needed help, where to find them. This worked because we did it together. People settled in for a long night. The water wouldn't go down fast, and going back to damaged homes in the dark was silly. Families huddled, sharing blankets and quiet talks. Kids, tired from fear, slept against their parents. Reverend Hutchkins came up looking sorry. I owe you both an apology, he said. I doubted you, your reasons. I was wrong. You saved this town. We didn't do it for apologies, Jacob said, not mean. We did it because it needed doing. Still, you have mine. The Reverend looked at the crowd. Everyone here owes you their lives or their loved ones' lives. We won't forget. As night fell, someone started a fire in Sarah's yard, kept safe from buildings. People gathered for warmth, and shock turned to relief, then almost celebration. They'd survived. They were together. The worst was over. Jacob sat by Sarah's chair, her hand on his shoulder, copper across their laps, happy with all the attention. Around the fire, people shared stories of the day. Mrs. Garrett came with her husband Howard, who looked older, broken. His house was likely gone, his pride definitely was. He stood before them, struggling. You saved my life, he said finally. When I'd only insulted you, treated you badly. His voice was rough. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, Sarah said gently. But listen next time. Trust people might know things you don't, even if they're different. Garrett nodded. That's fair. He looked at Jacob. The council needs to rebuild right, with flood defenses. Will you help? Your engineering know-how? Jacob glanced at Sarah, who squeezed his shoulder. I'll help, Jacob said. On one condition. No shortcuts, no ignoring facts because they're inconvenient. We build to last. Agreed. Garrett shook Jacob's hand. As night deepened, the fire gathering got almost festive. Someone played a harmonica, music floating in the cold air. Kids who'd been scared now played tag. Adults who'd been strangers shared blankets and stories like old pals. Sarah watched, feeling everything had changed. 6 months ago, she was alone on this porch. Sure, her life was done. Now she was at the heart of a community she'd helped save, beside a man she loved. Proof strength came in ways people didn't always see. Thomas came up with 2 cups of coffee, handing them to Sarah and Jacob. I was wrong, he said, about everything. Leaving you after the accident, thinking your disability made you less, thinking Jacob wasn't good enough. He looked at Sarah. You're the strongest person I know, stronger than I'll ever be. I'm happy you found someone who sees that. Thank you, Thomas, Sarah said. That means something. Tell me about Catherine. She's at the church with her family. When you meet her, you'll get why I know I was wrong about you. She's like you, strong, smart, doesn't let anyone tell her what she can't do. I'm lucky she'll marry me. Then we're both lucky, Sarah said. We found the right people. As Thomas left, Jacob kissed Sarah's hand gently. Ready to rest? It's going to be a long few days. Checking damage, starting repairs, getting people home. I know. We'll handle it together. Sarah looked at him. this quiet man who saw her worth when no one else did. "Jacob, will you stay? Not just tonight, but after. Help rebuild the town? Build a life with me? I was hoping you'd ask." He kissed her, not caring who saw. "My place is with you now. Wherever you are, that's home." Around them, Willowbrook settled in, saved, humbled, changed by the flood and the two people who wouldn't let it win. 3 days later, the water dropped enough for people to check their homes. 20 houses in Low Town were wrecked beyond fixing. 30 more could be repaired. The store, mill, and other businesses needed big work, but no one died. No one was badly hurt. The town survived because two people ignored fear of judgment and spoke the truth. Sarah and Jacob worked with the community to recover. Jacob's engineering skills helped check damage and plan repairs to survive future floods. Sarah organized supplies, food, clothes, materials from nearby towns. Her cabin stayed a meeting place, people coming for help, supplies, or just a safe spot. The woman they'd avoided was now central to the town, handling it with calm skill. 6 months later, spring came to Willowbrook, bringing change. Rebuilding was going strong, guided by Jacob's flood-proof designs. New buildings sat on higher ground, stronger against water. Channels and barriers kept creek overflow away from homes. The new town was tougher, smarter, built to last. But more than buildings, the community changed. The flood stripped away fake politeness and walls, making people see each other clearly. Those who judged Sarah for her wheelchair now saw her strength. Those who called Jacob a hermit respected his skill and care. On a warm April morning, Sarah sat on her porch, once a lonely spot, now full of life. Young Mary Sullivan was learning leatherwork, carefully stamping a pattern under Sarah's patient eye. 2 other kids waited their turn while their moms chatted and sipped coffee. Jacob came out of the cabin with a wooden frame he'd made, sized for Sarah's latest project, a big leather wall hanging of the town and mountains for the new town hall. "Your best work yet," he said, kissing her head. "Our work," Sarah said. "You made the frame, figured out the sizes, helped with perspective?" "I held the ruler. You made art." Their teamwork was normal now, no longer gossip, just part of the town. Jacob had moved most of his stuff from the mountain cabin, though they kept it for quiet getaways. Mrs. Henley arrived with bread, not as charity, but as a friend. She watched Sarah teach the kids, nodding approval. "Council meeting tomorrow," she said. "They're voting on Jacob as permanent town engineer. Should be unanimous. He'll take it if they do it right," Sarah said. "He's picky about that, as he should be." Mrs. Henley smiled. "Heard there's another ceremony soon?" Sarah's chest warmed. "Next month. Small wedding, just close friends and family. The whole town's your family now, dear. After what you and Jacob did saving us, no one forgets." The flood had changed Sarah's story in Willowbrook's eyes. She wasn't the sad case or burden anymore. She was Sarah Brennan, craftswoman, leader, woman who saved a town. Her wheelchair was just how she got around, not who she was. That afternoon, Sarah rolled down Main Street, now wider with better drainage. People greeted her, stopped to talk, asked her thoughts on big and small things. Shops showed off her leather goods, and she had 2 apprentices to keep up with orders. She stopped at her dad's old store, rebuilt now. A plaque said, "Brennan Building," honoring her dad and their family's role in the town. Thomas came out, managing the store now since his dad stepped back after the flood. Catherine, pregnant, was with him. "Sarah, good timing," Thomas said. "Catherine has a question." Catherine knelt by Sarah's chair. No awkwardness. "We'd love for you to make something for the baby. A leather book, something lasting they can treasure?" "I'd be honored," Sarah said warmly. "Come by next week, we'll plan the design." As they parted, Sarah went to the church hill, where Jacob was finishing a flood barrier with a crew. He saw her, sweaty but smiling. "Taking a break?" she asked. "For you, always." He sat by her chair, wiping his face. "How are the kids today?" "Eager. Mary's going to be great if she keeps practicing." "Like her teacher." He took her hand, feeling the calluses from her leather work, good calluses, earned through skill. I was thinking about the mountain cabin. We should go next week before the wedding. A few quiet days, just us. I'd like that. Sarah kissed him. You've made sure I never feel alone. Neither of us is. Not anymore. They sat as the sun moved, watching the town below, kids playing. Shops busy, families living their ordinary. Precious lives, all safe because two hurt people stood together when it mattered. The wedding was in early May. Simple, in the church with everyone there. Sarah wore a new cream dress, chosen with Catherine, not her old one, a fresh start. Jacob wore his old army uniform, cleaned up, fitting him again after months of hard work. Doc Morrison led the ceremony, ordained just for them. Reverend Hutchkins was there, but let Morrison take the lead, knowing they needed someone who believed in them from the start. As they said their vows, Sarah looked at the crowd, Mrs. Henley wiping tears, the Pattersons smiling, Thomas and Catherine holding hands, her students fidgeting, even Howard Garrett nodding approval. I, Sarah Brennan, take you, Jacob Cole, to be my husband. In good times and bad, in joy and sorrow, for all our days. I, Jacob Cole, take you, Sarah Brennan, to be my wife, in light and dark, in healing and hope, as long as we live. The party was in Sarah's yard, bigger now with space Jacob cleared. Tables were full of food, music played, people danced. Jacob lifted Sarah from her chair, holding her close as they swayed, her feet off the ground, her heart flying. Happy? He asked. More than I ever thought I could be. She touched his face. After the accident, I thought my life was done. Now I know I was wrong. I lost what didn't matter as much as I thought. I found what I really needed. Purpose, respect, love. You found each other, Jacob said. Two people who forgot how to hope, remembering together. As evening came, lanterns lit the yard. A community quilt was being made, every family adding a square from scraps, including bits of Sarah's old wedding dress. Each square told a story of the flood, the rescue, the rebuilding. It would hang in the new town hall, a reminder of what they survived together. But more, it showed strength came in surprising ways. Worth wasn't about walking or standing, and the best communities were built by people who saw each other clearly. Years later, at the dedication of the town's new flood defenses, Sarah spoke to the crowd, not to brag, but to remind them. The worst hurts aren't always the ones that break our bodies, she said, her voice strong. Sometimes it's being unseen, unheard, dismissed. The accident took my legs, but the town's abandonment almost took my spirit. She found Jacob's eyes, drawing strength. We all get broken sometimes. The question isn't if we'll break, it's what we build from the pieces. She pointed to the town, rebuilt and strong. We built this together, not just buildings and walls, but a community that sees everyone's worth, listens to wisdom from anywhere, stands together when it counts. The crowd cheered, and Sarah felt it, not a burden, but a gift. She'd survived the accident, the abandonment, the flood. She'd rebuilt her life, her view of what life could be. As she rolled from the podium, Jacob met her with their daughter, 2 years old, with his dark hair and eyes, her stubborn streak. The girl reached for Sarah, who pulled her onto her lap, kissing her forehead. "Tell me about the flood, Mama," the girl said. "Like always. Another time, Emma," Sarah said. The name chosen to honor Jacob's first daughter, never forgotten. "Let's go home." Home was the cabin, now bigger for their family, Jacob's workshop, Sarah's leather business. Home was the mountain cabin for quiet escapes. Home was Willowbrook, now a place of belonging. But mostly, home was wherever they were together. Two people who learned strength wasn't about standing tall but refusing to fall, even when the world tried to break you. Two people who found love in unexpected places, and that being truly seen was worth more than walking could ever be. That evening, on their porch, watching the sun set over the mountains, Sarah thought about their journey, from paralysis to purpose, abandonment to acceptance, brokenness to a new kind of wholeness. She'd once thought the accident was the worst thing. Now she knew it just led her to where she needed to be, not despite her disability, but with it, as part of her. Jacob's hand found hers, their daughter sleeping between them, Copper still loyal at their feet. The town glowed below, lights in windows, smoke from chimneys, life going on in its beautiful, normal way. "What are you thinking?" Jacob asked softly. Sarah smiled, squeezing his hand. "That I'm glad I dropped that book the day you came by. Glad you picked it up. Glad you saw me. I'll always see you," Jacob said. "All of you. Everything you are." And that was all anyone needed, to be seen, known, and loved for who they were, not what they could or couldn't do. Sarah had learned to survive alone on her island, but she'd learned something better too.